now call this meeting to order. If you would please stand and join Ms. Pollier in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Greenberg is absent. Hicks.
Here.
Mako.
Here.
Pollier.
Here.
Shapaka is absent. Suriano.
Here.
Tamarkin.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No, sir.
Next item of business is the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the May 14th meeting?
Motion to approve the minutes by Tamarkin.
Is there a second?
Second, Mako.
So we have a motion by Tamarkin, a second by Mako. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Pollier.
Yes.
Suriano.
Yes.
Thank you. For those that are present tonight and wish to address the commission, I'd like to remind everyone to please speak into the microphone at the podium and turn in a speaker slip before you leave. And at this time, would you please direct your attention to our Assistant City Attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are now at the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing will operate as follows. Administrative staff will make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant or their representative may then make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant has 10 minutes to present. An additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Public comment will then be open for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Speakers must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium and state their name and address. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes to comment. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. If there is more than one application pending for a particular address, the presentation on each application may be consolidated and presented as one. At this time, will persons wishing to present testimony this evening please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. I called it a podium, but it's a lectern, so my apologies. Our first group of applicants is related to the Gahanna Logistics Center, and I'd like to ask the clerk to please read the applications into the record.
We have DP-0003-2025 to consider a development plan application for property located at Tech Center Drive, parcel ID 027-000110, current zoning IM, Innovation and Manufacturing, Gahanna Logistics Center, Mark Myers applicant, and application V-0015-2025 to consider a variance application to vary sections 4C1A Site Planning, 5A3 Building Appearance, 5B1A Roofing, 5B2E Roofing, 6A1 Landscaping and Screening, and 4F1 Site Planning of the Central Park Overlay, and to vary sections 1109.02 A and B Setbacks and Structure Placement, and 1109.01J Parking, Access, and Circulation of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Gahanna for property located at Tech Center Drive, parcel ID 027-000110, current zoning IM, Innovation and Manufacturing, Gahanna Logistics Center, Mark Myers applicant.
Thank you. We'll now turn the meeting over to the administration for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item, as you stated, is the Gahanna Logistics Center. Looking at the zoning map on your screen here, all of our applications tonight are in this general area. And for context, right here on the left side of the screen, this is Hamilton Road. Unfortunately, there's a lag here. Tech Center Drive as we head east. Again, 270. Here in the purple, this is IM. This is the Innovation and Manufacturing Zoning Classification. Everything you see in purple, which is south of Taylor Road, essentially all of that is the same zoning as this particular parcel, IM. The parcels that you see with the overlay there in black on your screen, those are the parcels that are subject to the Central Park overlay. So they are subject to the IM zoning classification and the overlay. That's a large part of the Central Park area subject to the overlay here. The property itself, it's 10 acres in size. It's comprised of two separate parcels. One of those parcels is an 025 prefix, so that's in Mifflin Township. The other one's an 027, that's Jefferson Township. That's relevant because you cannot combine two different parcels of two different taxing designations. So there is a variance, I think that was the 1109 variance that was referenced. That is because there are two separate parcels that cannot be combined. The county doesn't allow for that to be combined. Like I said, there's really two different zonings. The overlay, it's really like a planned unit development, a PUD. If you're familiar with PUDs, they're supposed to be like a standalone zoning ordinance. That's really what this document is. If you're not familiar with PUDs, then I do envy you there. The overlay covers uses, setbacks, building design, landscaping, things of that nature. So really a lot of the elements that planning staff reviews for is in this overlay document, not our zoning code. We still do have to look for zoning code for elements that aren't covered. Those would be signage, which isn't part of tonight's request, parking, and then some of the odd items that aren't covered elsewhere. Again, most of the properties in this area, we kind of call this area Central Park. We call Creston Central Park. They're all subject to this overlay, and some of those projects that Planning Commission might be familiar with, we'll cover this a little bit later, are the Burns and Scalo project, which is immediately adjacent to this site to the west, the ADB Safe Gate, and then the peak at Edison. Like we looked at the zoning map, there are some other uses in this area. Jefferson Township is to the east of this property. Some of those sites in Jefferson Township, I think one or two are residential and the rest are more industrial outside storage in nature. There's also city-owned conservation area. We look back at the zoning map here. The area in green, and some of that conservation area does abut these properties. And with that, the overlay does allow for some reduced setbacks and things of that nature. The project itself, it is one building. It's 141,000 square feet. About 7,500 square feet is office. About 133,000 square feet is warehouse. That's similar in nature to the ADB Safegate and Burns and Scalo projects. Those were also warehouse manufacturing with a component of office. So it's pretty much the same use as the two adjacent properties. Those projects did have a larger office component than this one. Those uses, office, warehousing, manufacturing, those uses are allowed by right by the IM zoning classification and the overlay. 38-foot building height, it's a tall one-story. That's pretty much identical, especially to the ADB Safegate building in height and in size. And that's also about half of what the zoning classification allows for. So 65 feet is what's permitted by code. 118 car parking spaces, 5 semi-trailer parking spaces, and 25 loading docks. We'll look at that shortly. And there's no outside storage. I will say that Burns and Scalo had a large component of outside storage to the rear of their site. No outside storage with this request. ADB Safegate also had outside storage as well. Here, looking at their site plan very briefly, here on the to the left of the site in question here, that is where Burns and Scalo is. There's 2 access points proposed. Right here, this is I think what's mainly the truck access. This allows for truck movement back into the rear here of the site. Talked about the 25 loading docks. Again, that's in this location to the rear of the site. Really not visible. Again, there's the city-owned conservation area. There's some changes to the topography, and then there's also some residential property. So anything into the rear of this site, they strategically loaded the loading docks in this area and the truck parking. Again, that really wouldn't be visible from any adjacent property or any roadway. Another access point that aligns here on the south here, right with the Science and Tech Center intersection. Really quickly, here's a look at the building itself. We'll look at the other building, some other views of the building, and look at ADB Safegate and Burton Scalo here shortly. I do appreciate the applicant working with staff. We did talk about building design a little bit here, and the applicant did work with staff to add some additional architectural elements with some of the materials and colors, and what we were trying to do was kind of be compatible with Burns and Scalo and with ADB Safegate, with still, respecting their design standards and what they had wanted to design this warehouse building. This is precast concrete as the primary building material with aluminum and glass. Really quickly, looking at the landscape plan here, significant amount of preserved trees to the rear of the site. They aren't developing in this area. That's why they have the significant amount of tree preservation. The overlay essentially allows them to build up to property lines, so there's really not a lot of area to plant trees other than in the front, in the parking lot, and then around the building. Here, looking at the smaller picture on the right-hand side of your screen, this is a close-up of the building foundation plantings that are being proposed. The Central Park overlay does require building foundation planting. So this is the only part of the city within the overlay are required building foundation plantings. That is one of the variance requests. Although, as you can see in this picture, they are planting a significant amount of vegetation along the building. They still can't meet all of the requirements, so they're asking for a variance to that, and they would plant some additional trees in the parking area. Let's get into those variances. I'm sure we all wanted to, so let's get into them. On your screen now, I believe there's 5 variances that are specific to the Central Park overlay. I'll say 4 out of these 5 are frequently asked and requested and granted variances. The first one, site planning, that's a 30-foot setback for parking areas. So 30 feet is what the overlay requires. 20 feet is what they're proposing. Again, it would be in this area. Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay here with this cursor. That would be the area. Oddly enough, 20 feet is what our current zoning code would allow. So granting the variance would be consistent with the zoning code that we have in place today. The second one here is to the drive width. 30 feet is what the overlay allows. 38 feet is what's requested. This is a little bit unusual variance. This would not be at an access point, but this would be, I believe it's in this area here towards the rear of the site to allow for safe truck movement, 2-lane travel. Being that it's not along the roadway, our friends in the engineering department looked at this variance request and they didn't have any issues, so staff wouldn't have any issues either. Building appearance, so the overlay requires that the front facade, the main facade there facing the roadway, be designed with 50% brick or stone. That is a common variance request. That's up for, obviously, Planning Commission to evaluate. Did take a look briefly at the frontage there that they proposed. We'll take a look at that, and we'll compare that to ADB Safegate and Burns and Scalo, because both of those projects also had a variance request to this. Different design elements that they used, but again, this has been requested and granted in the past. Roofing, this is to screen the mechanical equipment. They provided a sight line survey that showed that essentially, from Science Tech Center and Taylor Road, there's very little, if any, visibility of the equipment, so they're requesting not to install a 2-foot tall parapet screen. The last one here for the overlay is those foundation plantings I referenced. Again, they are planting a significant amount of vegetation along the building foundation. However, it is difficult to meet. There have been a few other projects. I did reference the peak at Edison, which is just to the south. They also had that variance as well, where they couldn't plant all the building foundation plantings. So again, whether it's industrial or office, this seems to be a tricky one to meet. Two other variances. EV parking, this is a common one, and what they're proposing is what I think maybe our last one or two variances, and that was that they would install the conduit, and then when the tenants come in, then they would be built out at time of tenant. So again, that's fairly consistent with this new requirement with the variances we've granted. The last one here, this is the setbacks. We don't see this a lot, but we have seen it 2 or 3 times, and ADB Safegate was one of those projects. Again, this is when we have multiple parcels in those 2 different taxing jurisdictions. Again, technically, they can't meet the zoning code, which says, your setback line, they're going over their setback line because those parcels aren't combined. And it also says that your accessory activities have to be on the main parcel. Some of those activities, some of the parking is on the 025 parcel as well. So technically, that can't be combined. Variance criteria, the one I would focus on is maybe the first one, and that's, is the variance, we can grant it if not likely to result in substantial change to the essential character of the neighborhood. So a lot of times, what staff does when we look at that, we think of how consistent would this project be, how in character is it with the area if we grant those variances. Development plan has kind of some similar criteria here as, again, is it consistent with the land use character and development of the area? Would it have undesirable effects? And so if we look at this area just a little bit more closely, again, we have the tech center area, science. So here we have, this is Gahanna Logistics Center, and then some of those other projects I referenced, Burns and Scalo, again, just immediately to the west. ADB Safegate is just to the south. We have the Golf Depot, and we have Edison, the peak there. But if we look at the drive sequence here, this is Burns and Scalo. This is, again, the project that's immediately to the west of the Gahanna Logistics Center. Again, especially if we look at the side elevations, again, I think there's some similarity and probably more architectural variation in this request. It's incorporating some of the black here that you see on the front of Burns and Scalo. And again, Burns and Scalo had the same variance to the building materials. Here's ADB Safegate. Similar with their warehouses, about the same size or similar size as this project. They have a little bit larger office component. Again, we can see the front of the building. There's a lot of glass, but it doesn't have the brick and stone. They didn't meet that portion of the overlay. The Gahanna Logistics Center does meet the glazing requirements of the overlay. So they meet the amount of glass, they just have less brick and stone. And again, looking at the side of the building, trying to, come up with a design that was in character and harmony with what's out there. And so this is what eventually we ended up with. Again, the top image that's the main image. That would be the view along Science and Tech Center, what you would see. The north face here, where you see the loading docks, that's at the rear of the property, essentially not visible from any adjacent properties because of the terrain there and the vegetation. And then you have the east and west facades. So staff, we do recommend approval. Obviously, it's just a recommendation. It's non-binding. We do find that the use and design is consistent with the zoning code and the land use plan. Find it consistent with development trends in the area. Again, these are similar uses that we've seen in the Central Park overlay. I think our last 2 projects were ADB Safegate and Burns and Scalo that were in the overlay. The requested variances, there are a number of them, I think 7 in total. 1 or 2 of those are unavoidable in staff's opinion, and the rest are very sort of the frequent flyers that we've seen approved in other requests. Yeah, and with that, staff would conclude and turn it over to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackford. We'll now open the public comment portion for this application, and would the applicant like to comment?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Is the mic on? Okay. My name is Aaron Underhill. I'm with Underhill and Hodge at 8000 Walton Parkway in New Albany, and I'm a land use entitlement and zoning lawyer here representing Velocious Industrial Gahanna LP, which is the developer of the site. Happy to be here. We appreciate having worked with Michael throughout this process. This represents a speculative development, and it's about over a $19 million investment, all said and done. I think the applicant and the developer really believe in this site. They like the demographics of the area in terms of being able to attract businesses and workforce and tenants. We like the proximity to the highway system. And there are a lot of great things going on in this area, and as Michael underscored, this really does fit in well with the surrounding area. One of the challenges with the site, there are several challenges with the site that are leading to some of the variance requests. Michael touched on the fact that we do have some significant sloping of the property as we get to the rear and going down to the creek there. And so that essentially pushed a lot of the improvements forward, kind of even maybe shrunk the size of the building to some extent, and has driven, you always have to measure the amount of square footage you have with your parking and loading needs, and I think we balanced that adequately here. Also, subsurface studies have indicated some shallow rock in places, so that's informed the design. There are some existing public utility easements that are kind of in the rear of the site as well. I'm not sure they're necessarily shown here, but also informing and pushing everything sort of forward towards the road. And then there's an existing public trail along the east side of the site that also sort of frames this up. So all of that together, we did our best to kind of minimize the number of variances, but variances are based on practical difficulty, and for the most part, the topography and some of these other elements that are outside of our control have driven the need for those variances. Michael touched on as well the inability to combine the parcels. See this often in around central Ohio where this happens, and really sort of a classic variance case there. Nothing we can really do about it other than asking for that variance. So with that, we're excited about the project. We've got other team members here that have different areas of expertise, and we'll be happy to answer your questions, and we'll bring up whomever is most appropriate to do so. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Underhill. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And thank you for not sending Mr. Hodge in your place.
I'll tell him you said that.
All right. We do miss him, though. It's been a minute.
I'll give him your greetings.
Mr. Chair, I could probably get him here for my
No. That wasn't an invitation, Mr. Kanini. But thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment on this application? If you'd please state your name, address, and relationship to the project, and you have 3 minutes.
I will be brief. My name is Ryan O'Leary. I'm with KBC Development out of Hinsdale, Illinois. My address is 330 West Chestnut Avenue in Hinsdale. And we are part of the petitioner that is coming here today to ask for your approval on this development. We've been super excited about it. We appreciate the commissioner's time tonight. I just thought it would be good to just give you some perspective on why we selected this site and why we want to make a $19 million investment here. So, we are a developer of industrial real estate all over the country. And I've had a long history in the Columbus region. I was formerly with a company called Duke Realty that had a lot of investment here. Down in Rickenbacker, basically built out the entire industrial market in West Jefferson, among other areas. So I've had a lot of experience developing in Columbus. We've been looking for a site for some time with my new company. and we were super excited to land on this spot. We spent a tremendous amount of time with Michael and the staff, and I'm very appreciative of you, Michael, and your staff's time in getting through this. We really wanted to design something that we believed, really worked within the park and delivered a great product. The Columbus industrial market remains strong. It's somewhat overbuilt on the really large-scale projects, but within the market, there is a very tight vacancy rate on smaller product. Those companies generally like to lease. They generally don't have the time to go through the 8 months that it takes to get through these processes to get a project out of the ground. We've designed this building with ultimate flexibility to attract large scale, up to 140,000 square foot users, down to small scale, up to 3, potentially different divided spaces, down to 40,000 square feet, which is why we designed with 3 different storefront entrances. If you look at what's happened in Columbus out of the last, I think, 60 plus deals that have happened over the last 12 to 18 months, over 80% of them were between that size range of 40 to 150,000 square feet. So that is really showing that there is a continued demand from local and regional companies that need to find this kind of space in well-located areas, and it's just not out there. So to get the opportunity to land these companies, to grow them in Gahanna and get them here, we want to design one of the best products that we think is out there, and this is it. So with that, we'll open it to questions and answer whatever we can for you tonight.
Thank you very much. Stay tuned. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment? Seeing none, we'll now close the public portion of this application and open it up to questions from the commission, starting with Mr. Suriano.
Mr. Chair, no questions initially.
Mr. Tamarkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got a couple questions. In the back, there's some truck parking. You have 25 loading docks, maybe one tenant, maybe multiple tenants, but you only have 5 overflow spaces. I guess you're the warehouse experts. Is that sufficient? I will say we have another project here in Gahanna where it is not sufficient, and the trucks line up on the street, causing a lot of aggravation for the police, the neighbors, and everybody involved.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Commissioner. I think some history here. So when we started looking at the site and we went through our design, we did have additional trailer parking designed for this. The sanitary line that is a public sanitary line that the city installed on the northern part of the site, we found late. It's a pretty deep line, it's a pretty big line, and we really needed to avoid that. And so we had to rotate the building, worked with Michael and team to make that happen, and we were pinched on where we could put detention because we can't really utilize that land to the other side where we left all those trees to have additional detention area. You can't get the volume you need. So we believe that the users we'll find here are going to be production users. There will be some distribution users, but they will not be the heavy 3PL, high truck count users that would generally need that heavy, trailer parking. We believe we've got over what we need for docks, and if there's unused dock spaces, they can put a trailer in that area, which will be fully screened from the street. We did utilize that area that was available to us for the 5 overflows, but we believe that'll be sufficient for the uses we think will go here.
Thank you. And I will say 25 docks for 140,000 square foot buildings, probably a little overkill in that category, but 5 overflow spaces is probably
Yes.
potentially small.
It's the ability to put all 25 in. Most users may not require that many. So we just want to have the availability to put them in if they do.
Great. Mr. Underhill talked about the trail on the east side of the property that's existing. What about in the front of the property? Is there a trail there now? Does it wrap all the way around on Tech Center?
There is a trail there now, Mark. You may want to come up, but I want to say that right now it does run a little bit further to the west and then crosses right where he's got, right on the other side, actually, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah, it crosses on the west side of Science right now, and then everything on the east side of the property is existing. We are creating 2 new walkways to basically align that walking trail so that it is to the east side of our car access. so that it's not crossing that car access.
But a trail will stay in place.
This trail will stay in place.
On
It
the
is
east
it is in
side.
a public easement with the city, so that will remain in place. And then there is a 10-foot landscaping buffer from the edge of that easement to our parking curb.
Great. You talked a little bit about the foundation plantings. You're asking for a variance. What percentage of plantings are you going to plant compared to what would be required without a variance? So I guess what's the reduction in plantings that you're really asking for? Any idea?
Mark, do you have that calc?
Good evening. Mark Myers, 1010 Greyhawk, Algonquin, Illinois. I'm with Arco Murray, the general contractor here. Michael, I don't know if you have that figure in the variance request, the hard figures, but basically what we're trying to do, because of the amount of trees that we saved in the back, technically we don't need to provide any trees in the front, and we just didn't feel that was right. So it's not that we're short on foundation plantings, it's more so we thought it would be better, it would look more aesthetically pleasing to have trees in the, nestled throughout in the car parking areas. And this is separate from the parkway trees. So you see all the trees that we're showing in those landscape islands.
Yep.
Those are basically trading for foundation plantings. And so that's the trade that we're requesting.
When I originally read this, I didn't think there was any foundation plantings, but then Michael showed us a picture that did have some. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that there was some, I guess on the picture on the right here. So there is some against the building, right?
Yes.
Not just on the parking islands.
I think where we ran into the issue of hitting the count, and we can try to follow up with you with the direct, percentages, is when we have the 3 storefronts, right? There's concrete, there's aprons for tenant access, pedestrian walkways. You can't plant there. And so that's where we kind of started not being able to hit. We're doing foundation plantings along where we have open space to do it, but where we don't, that's where we ran into the issue.
And based on the picture on the right here, it looks like it's going to be mostly on the south face and the west face.
Correct.
The back is trucks and the east is too
Yes,
tight.
exactly. That's where you can start to run into the count issues.
Okay. Last question. EV, you're going to wire for it, you're going to put the plumbing in, and then it's up to the individual tenant if they want it, or?
Yeah, the conduit would be run in, it'll be run directly to the electrical room and be set up for it. A lot of times tenants have specific requests. They may want a Tesla level 2 charger, they may want a, more of a standard jack. We just, until the tenant's requesting, we know it's an obligation for us to put it in. So we do, when we make these investments, we carry a tenant improvement allowance package that we provided the tenants to build out their office space. This would be included in that as far as, so we would end up probably funding that, not putting it on the tenant to do, but we don't want to put in something that would be unusable to the tenants.
But if your tenant wanted to use that money to make a nicer office, there's a potential that there's no EV chargers and a nicer looking office.
Yeah, there's that potential, but we're obligated to put them in.
So at some point, there will be something there.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Mako, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. Just a couple questions. First off, for the administration, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but this use is permitted by right, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. A couple questions for the applicant. And again, I think these are pretty minor. The access drive there on the west side for the truck traffic, is that, I'm looking at this 30-foot for, looks like pavement to pavement. Is that standard, and you feel comfortable to get not only one truck, but if someone's trying to get out, that's going to be able to accommodate that traffic?
Yeah, it'll be able to accommodate the traffic at 30 feet. I mean, we've seen drives as low as 25 feet. We prefer a 30-foot drive aisle. We widen it where we're requesting the variance is kind of where it turns for truck maneuverability. So we did have our civil engineers run truck maneuvering for a full-size 53-footer to make sure that pinch point had enough room for 2 trucks to get through there.
Okay, very good. And could you expand a little bit on the retaining wall that's going to be on that west side there? Just the form and purpose of it?
Sure. Actually, that would probably be better for Mark, who's directly involved with the civil engineers on this.
Yeah, so basically, you see the finger of the conservation area that the city owns is kind of teeing right into the 45 drive there. That's basically a center line of a kind of a gully. So
Right.
it's the lowest spot on the site, and we have to meet that grade. So essentially, from our finished floor, which is about 902, that bottom of that gully is down at like, I would say 897, I believe. So we have to have, a decent sized cast in place concrete wall. We're still deciding whether or not we're going to have kind of like a Jersey barrier situation or a highway guardrail situation at that point. So kind of from the center line of that easement there, or conservation area, that it kind of goes up very sharply in both directions. So that's the tallest part of the wall, and it's probably about 15 to 16 feet tall. It'll be cast in place concrete.
That
Okay.
portion would be cast in place, but is it cast in place all the way down?
Yes, the whole wall along the west. So as the grade is falling down, we're not going down as fast. So we probably started about two feet high right at the entrance there for the trucks. And as we approach that back corner where Michael has the red dot, that's probably about 10 feet tall right there. So we go from 2 feet to 10 feet as we go towards the back. It's just to keep that truck slope nice and as flat as possible.
Right.
Towards the back.
Okay. Next question, is there going to be any signage associated with this building in the front?
Yes, typically, we will follow the municipality's signage code. We do anticipate that whether we get 1 or 2 or 3 tenants, they always like to have their company logo on the building.
Sure.
And that would be provided under the rules of Gahanna.
And any
Monument signage?
well, yeah, I'm talking about maybe potentially ground-mounted signage.
Yeah, so ground-mounted signage, monument signage, we usually do put at our access points.
Okay.
So there would be at least one, kind of more probably at either the main auto entrance or closer to the truck entrance there. Yeah, where the auto entrance is probably going to make the most sense for sightline visibility.
Sure. And then final questions, getting back to the questions about the multi-use path. I saw on one of the submissions that it looks like you're proposing to do some, I would characterize it as off-site improvements with multi-use paths. Are you committed to that?
Mark, are you aware with engineering if we've got to, we are doing improvements to where we've got to relocate the path, and I think.
And this is specifically on the south side there of Tech Center Drive, where it intersects with Science Boulevard.
Yes.
It's going to be on that southeast corner there.
Correct. So on the east side where the water main is, there's a little jog where we have to straighten it out. So there's a little stretch there. We're going to reintroduce a new path and regrade. And then I think what we have up on the screen here is showing I believe it's showing the multi-use path crossing at the existing point. Yeah, there. So that would be, is that what you're considering, the off-site improvements?
Correct.
Yeah. So engineering had asked for us to maintain the multi-use path integrity, I guess you would say. So, or continuity, a better word. So that's what we're showing there. So it's going to cross and maintain connection on the east side of our access drive.
Okay.
And those improvements are required as part of our approvals with engineering, so they will be part of our scope of work, not the city's.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ms. Paulier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question, I guess, is just a general question about the speculative nature of the property and why that, I guess why it's being handled that way when you don't have any end users essentially identified. Why not just wait until you have an end user to be able to come before us with a design review application?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I tried to address that earlier. I think well, one, it's our business to build these and invest in these across the country, and we believe we're good at locating tenants, finding the demand requirements within these markets to secure long-term regional, national, and local businesses to lease these facilities long-term and provide new homes to them, right, as they look to grow and expand in your community. The size of these facilities, the smaller ones, there's just not a lot of groups, I'd say it's less than 10% that look to build these on their own or will wait or have the capacity to wait for a build-to-suit. These take a long time to plan, a long time to get approvals for, and a tremendous amount of investment. And so generally the smaller users in this size range, don't have the capacity or skill set to get through to build these, and B, generally can't wait, right? If you think about, all the companies you talked about when they're looking at expanding, like generally they come in, they're like, we need to be in a space in 4 to 6 months. And these buildings take a year to build. So if you don't have the product, most of the time they will go to a competing location that has something up, which may not fit their needs perfectly, but they will make it work. So what we try to do is, look at all the market dynamics, build what we believe are going to be the most desirable things into a facility, and then land those tenants that can't wait. Because most of the time, the tenants cannot wait.
So I guess a follow-up to that would be, what kind of market dynamics did you identify where it would lead you to design this building for 3 tenants? Are these 3 like equal spaces, or?
It's flexible. I mean, our goal would be to find one tenant for the space that would want to put, a large facility here and lease all 140,000 square feet. But,
Like an office, or like one tenant for like?
One tenant for the whole
office?
facility would generally, have a fairly sizable office component to it, and then may have some production or warehousing space as part of their operations at the facility. We designed the building to go as small as 3 tenants, which would be roughly, 35,000 to 40,000 square feet apiece. We could go, 170, 270,000 square foot tenants, or 100,000 square foot tenant in a smaller regional business. It's designed with flexibility to do that. Other things that we really looked at is just, if you look at the market in the Columbus area, these size of facilities, the demand and the amount of space that's being absorbed, and then the vacancy rate. There's just not, as I said earlier, the majority of the transactions that have happened in Columbus over the last 12 to 18 months have been tenants between 25,000 and 150,000 square feet, with the larger ones being a little smaller. And those are typically the tenants that don't have the availability to wait. We also looked at this as, we like the dynamics here in Columbus. I mean, you guys have all seen the advanced manufacturing, the production, the beauty businesses that have all, a lot of them have gone up to New Albany and speculative facilities that have been constructed up there. We believe we will attract these tenants to this location. It's proximate to the airport. It has great highway infrastructure, quick access, all the things we look for to make an investment like this. It hit the mark.
Has there been any preliminary research done as to the specificity of who these tenants will be? Other than, I don't know, have any potential tenants been identified?
We've been doing some soft marketing, obviously without plan commission approval. We really can't put it out, publicly
Sure.
Because we're not approved to build yet. And so, we have done some soft reach out. There has been some interest with groups already inquiring about when we were going to be able to deliver this building. But I can't say for certain what it will be. It is speculative in nature. We're seeing demand from bio. We're seeing demand from pharmaceutical users. We're seeing demand from more regional production users. Home goods continue to be in demand as well. So all those types of uses would be entertained here.
Will these be listed with local real estate brokerage firms?
Yes, KBC opened an office here locally this year. We have two brokerage professionals, Bo Taggart and Joe Keminer, who have been engaged to do the leasing, and they're located in Columbus.
Okay. I guess I have another question too, just kind of about the trail that we were talking about earlier. How close is the parking lot going to be to that trail?
At the closest, it's 10 feet, and that's the minimum of the landscape buffer between the
And-
parking curb and the trail.
And what will be placed in between the parking lot and the trail?
There's landscaping shrubs that are getting planted in that area. Generally, if you look at the landscaping plan, there's just general trees and shrubs that'll be planted there.
Not like any kind of a fence or anything like that?
There's no fence plan there at this time.
Okay. And then what about security issues, just on the site in general, once it's developed? Is there a plan for that, or is that up to the tenants?
It's generally up to the tenants, what they want to do for security. Some tenants, depending on the products they're having there, if it's very high value and stuff like that, they'll put in cameras, they'll put in different security mechanisms.
Okay.
But that's really a tenant-specific item that generally gets handled with the tenant improvements.
Were they looking for triple net leases?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I think those are all the questions I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So I know that Mr. Gottke was wanting to dazzle us with his CRA calculations, but since CRAs and TIFs are not under our purview, you can keep your phone in your pocket, Jeff. Are there any further questions for the applicant or administration? Mr. Soriano?
No additional.
All right, seeing no questions, is there a motion to approve the design review or development plan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve item DP-0003-2025.
There's a motion by Mr. Mako. Is there a second?
Second, Soriano.
Second by Mr. Soriano. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to be in favor of the application, notably for a lot of the reasons that staff outlined in their report. But I don't think any of the variances materially affect this area. And as Mr. Mako noted, this is a use by right. So,
Thank you. Mr. Tamarkin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll agree with Mr. Suriano. I think everything's appropriate. It's an appropriate fit. The building looks appropriate compared to the neighbors and the other similar buildings. And I think it's a nice addition to Gahanna. So I will certainly be in favor.
Mr. Mako?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also going to be voting in favor. My main comment would be that, there's probably a reason why the site is undeveloped right now, and the inherent challenges of, the topography and location. But it looks like that a lot of thought has been put forward in in design, and I think this is going to be a great and viable project for the city. So I will be voting in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pollier?
My hesitation here is just the speculative nature of this development. However, given that, I think the building itself meets the design review criteria. I'm not really very concerned about any of the variances, as everybody else has discussed. Like I said, my concern is the speculative nature, the fact that this building is being designed for tenants that don't exist, that aren't really even specifically identified. However, that's not, I believe that's out of the purview of the Planning Commission to decide. And as long as the building meets the specifications, requirements of our code, which it does, given the variances also, and as long as the tenants are obviously in compliance with our zoning code and other regulations, I also will be in favor of it.
Thank you. I also will be in support of the application. The criteria to approve a development plan have been met, in my opinion. This seems like a very worthwhile project for the city, and look forward to seeing it progress. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mako.
Yes.
Suriano.
Yes.
Pollier.
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes. Motion passes. Welcome to Gahanna. Is there a motion to approve the variance application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approve item V-0015-2025.
We have a motion by Mr. Mako. Is there a second?
Second, Suriano.
Second by Mr. Suriano. Any discussion on the variance application? Mr. Suriano.
No additional comments.
Mr. Tamarkin.
No comments.
Mr. Mako.
No comments.
Ms. Collier.
No additional comments either.
And none from me. So roll call, please.
Mako,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move to some projects at the Crescent area, starting with the Crescent Retail Project. And I'll ask Ms. McGuire to please read them into the record.
We have DP-0004-2025 to consider a development plan application for property located at Tech Center Drive, parcel ID 025-014183, current zoning GC, general commercial, the Crescent Retail, Carter Bean applicant, and V-0016-2025 to consider a variance application to vary sections 1107.01G, citywide design standards, 1109.01A1, parking, access, and circulation, and 1109.02E, setbacks and structure placement of the codified ordinances of the City of Gahanna for property located at Tech Center Drive, parcel ID 025-014183, current zoning GC, general commercial, the Crescent Retail, Carter Bean applicant.
Thank you. We'll now turn the meeting over to the administration for their presentation.
This next project is a bit farther west on Tech Center Drive, and it's a part of the Crescent development area. It's located just north of Tech Center and just east of Hamilton Road. The project includes a major development plan and variance for 2 new multi-tenant retail and restaurant buildings. The site includes 2 buildings, one of which is 10,000 square feet and one of which is around 6,500 square feet. Between the 2 buildings, there's a total of 8 tenant spaces with 2 drive-throughs, one on each building, and 2 patio areas. The primary materials for the buildings are burgundy and gray brick with metal accents. These materials are consistent with the sheets that is currently under construction, as well as the medical office building development that we'll see later tonight. There are a total of 127 parking spaces on the site, which exceeds code requirements by 1. And the project also includes 6 EV charging spaces, which is the exact amount that the zoning code requires. Here is the landscape plan that was submitted by the applicant. For this project, the zoning code requires around 3,800 square feet of landscaping within and around the parking lot, and that has been provided. All of the tree planting requirements are also met. There will be 38 parking lot trees and an additional 102 caliber inches of trees to meet the requirements in Chapter 914. The site is a bit unique since it has 2 frontages, one along Crescent Circle and one along Hamilton Road, and because of that, parking lot screening is required around almost the entire parking lot, and that has been provided through landscaping. There's also a sidewalk that connects the 2 buildings to the Crescent Circle frontage. Here's a more in-depth site plan so you can see where Hamilton Road and Crescent Circle are. The 2 retail buildings are shown in purple, and you can see the patio areas in between those 2 buildings. I also called out the 2 dumpster locations on the site plan since there's a variance required for their location. The 2 drive-through areas are in yellow, and then the 6 EV charging spaces are in green. Here are some renderings of the development. The larger image on the bottom is a rendering of the entire area showing the retail development as well as the medical office building that we'll be seeing later, and then the Sheets development that's currently under construction. The 2 renderings on the top are the views from each of the frontages. The top is from Hamilton Road, and the bottom is from Crescent Circle. The site does have access off of Crescent Circle, but not off of Hamilton. Here are the materials that were submitted. So we have the two different colors of brick, the metal trim, and then the paint colors. You can see what those look like in the elevation. There are 3 variances included with this project. The first is for citywide design standards. The zoning code states that the ground floor primary facade of a commercial building must be at least 25% transparent glass. This is a new requirement that went into effect with the zoning code update about a year ago. There are 4 primary facades on this site since there are 2 frontages and 2 buildings, and they are between 3.4 and 25.4% glass. So one facade out of the 4 meets the code requirement and the other 3 do not. The next requirement is that parking areas must be located to the rear of the primary building. Since there are 2 frontages on this site, this requirement is impossible to meet, and no matter where the parking was located on site, a variance would still be required. The final variance request is that dumpsters must be located to the rear of the primary building and meet parking setbacks. The setbacks are met, but once again, due to the frontages on the site, it's impossible to locate the dumpster to the rear because there is no rear yard. And then here is the variance criteria that must be met for the variances to be approved. And staff recommends approval of all 3 variances as submitted. The applicant states that the main reason that the 25% glass requirement is difficult to meet is due to the new energy code requirements that went into effect in 2024. And because there are 4 primary facades on the site, it's difficult to meet the 25% on all 4 of them. The site also has 2 frontages, making it impossible to locate parking and dumpsters to the rear, but the parking lot is adequately screened from the right-of-way, and the dumpster screening requirements exceed what code requires since there is a dumpster enclosure and then landscaping around the enclosure as well. This is the major development plan criteria. So that the development meets the applicable development standards of the zoning ordinance. It's in accord with appropriate plans for the area. It would not have undesirable effects on the surrounding area, and it would be in keeping with the existing land use character and physical development potential of the area. Staff also recommends approval of the major development plan, as staff believes that the application meets all of the criteria. The use is permitted by right and is consistent with the zoning code, as well as the surrounding area, which is primarily commercial. The building design also matches the proposed medical office building development as well as the sheets, and all landscaping and setback requirements are met. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kapka. We'll now open the meeting up to public comment and ask if the applicant would like to make any comments. Welcome back, Mr. Canini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commission. It's good to be back. Maddie, thank you so much for your description. Larry Canini, Canini & Associates, 3841 Man Road, Blacklick, Ohio. I have Carter Bean with me from Carter Bean Architects, who you saw renderings up on the screen that he was instrumental in putting together for us. Carter's been extremely helpful in this project in trying to blend what we've been trying to do here with not only this retail project and the medical building that we will be presenting shortly, but also making sure that we blended well with the Ortho 1 project that you're all familiar with. And most importantly, how do you match up with sheets with their red awnings and their lovely bricks? So been a challenge for Carter, but I think he's done a fabulous job in doing that. But again, we're excited to finally bring some retail to this Crescent project. You're all very familiar with all the medical that we did on Buckles Court North, and now with the residential apartments underway, and we should start seeing tenants in their first quarter of next year. We thought it would be time to bring some of the services that will be needed here, not only for the daytime employment folks, but also for these folks that will be residing in the area. So our goal, very similar to what you just heard from the warehouse folks, is how do you design something and create something that will attract the users but also be functional for the users. So Carter and I kind of really looked at this and tried to consider all of the potential users that might come our way, both with the drive-through end caps that you see on each of the buildings, but also internally trying to create what will hopefully be some type of restaurant and food service use. So we have created the patio concepts with the garage doors that can open and create that outdoor dining. Ironically, one of our first commitments is coming from a local dentist. So there you have the fact that we see the medical market tend to like the retail exposure and visibility. So that's an issue we're dealing with in trying to accommodate that user when they come, but also not limiting ourselves and hopefully attracting some food type services, general services that folks would need. So again, the balance of the daytime employment with the residential folks, we're hoping we can get that nice blend as we go to market with this project. We have softly marketed the project, but of course, wanting to get your blessing before we go full force on our marketing, but having good interest so far. Carter, you have anything to add? Yes. Go.
Carter Bean, 4400 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio, 43214. I'd like to speak a little bit to the transparency variance that we're requesting, give a little bit more background to that. And if we could go to a site plan, Maddie, that would be great. There we go, that's perfect. So given the two frontages that were mentioned, you know, getting the transparency to occur on both sides of the building just naturally is difficult. Tenant spaces will have a back of house and a front of house. The way the site is laid out, we wanted to distribute parking appropriately for each of the buildings. The larger south building, obviously with the drive-through wrapping around the west and south sides, would tend to favor, obviously, this lobe of the parking and make the east face of that building its front entrance. So the rear of that building, which is facing Hamilton Road, would be the side that we wouldn't necessarily want as much transparency. It's back of house. Conversely, the north building, because the eastern parking field would be dominated by the southern larger building, we're forcing the entrance side of that building up to the northwest here. So on the west facade, that one is, for the most part, transparent, while the east face is intended to be back of house, not as transparent. What I'd like to add, though, is the variance request that we have before you is a worst case scenario. And the very first tenant with whom we're speaking now, who would take a good portion of this south building, is a medical user that doesn't necessarily have the back of house that a retail or restaurant user would have. And we're going to request adding some glass administratively to take out some of those infilled storefronts, put in storefronts that match the other side of the building, which reduces that variance, but we don't want to keep coming back and changing the variance. So we're asking for the worst case scenario right now, with the intent of, if a tenant can utilize glass, we would put it in. You know, so that would lessen the actuality of what we'd be approved to do. So with that, I think we can open it up to questions and fill in any other blanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing and open it up to questions from the commission, starting with Mr. Soriano.
Yes. So just a question for Mr. Bean. So this is like a similar, what's front of house and what's back of house is like similar problem to what we have. It's not a problem, it's a challenge. What's on Hamilton, where Duncan is, and you know, as you're working your way up, right? Because you're parking on one side, but the side that's facing the street really, you know, so it's not ambiguous. It's just like a question of what do you pick? So would you all consider the east side or the west side facing Hamilton? I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to confirm the front of house or back of house.
So for the larger south building, the front of house is east.
Okay,
And for the smaller north building, the front of house is west.
okay.
So they're east-west.
Because it looks like even just with the elevations that you all have, you've made an effort to kind of make that, or, you know, there's a little bit of flexibility, I think, built into it, just based on what I'm seeing in the elevations, right? You still, you have the kind of parking bay, or you have the kind of bays of the, whether it's single tenant, multi-tenant, built in. So it does, I think, give you some flexibility.
If I may, Mr. Siriani?
Yeah.
Siriano, when you referenced the one Duncan at Hamilton and what would that be? Morrison, I guess, Hamilton
Yeah.
and Morrison. I think the difference there is you really only have front facing to Hamilton Road.
Right.
You've got a fence behind the backside, so
Yeah.
there really is a rear to it. I just drove through it today, actually.
Right.
So in our situation, because of the loop road, Crescent Loop, we're kind of have frontage on both sides.
Right.
Let alone Tech Center to the south, that creates basically another visible frontage.
Sure.
Because of the two frontages, we're required to meet that transparency.
That transparency, right.
Right.
Right, right. So, yeah, and understandable. Okay, I don't have many questions, but that's it.
Mr. Tamarkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's interesting, when I first looked at this, I was wondering, I thought it was all facing east, and I'm wondering why the building's in the center of the parcel and not pushed to the back. Was that a consideration to push it to the property line and do all the parking on the Crescent Loop side?
It was, but again, I think in understanding that we're dealing with literally four-sided architecture, I just felt like it has a better presence and circulation as well to have the building sit in the middle and let everything circulate around it with parking and drive lanes all around it. I just think it serves itself better. And you get a breakup of a massive parking field. The one thing you don't want is a huge parking field like a Myers that you get with a Myers or that you get with a big box. Here, what we've done, we've spread that out. And I think we've created two fronts, really four fronts, where you really don't know what's front and back, just depending on the tenant's choice of which way they want to come in. Do they want to come in, have their entrance be on the Hamilton Road side or the Loop side? So we really won't know until each tenant comes along, because as Carter said, we have that ability to add a storefront to the rear and expand those storefronts beyond what we're showing now.
Right.
Similar to the shops at Rocky Fork.
Right.
With the pedestrian pass-through, no matter where you park on either side, you can walk through and around and
Right.
get
Right.
to either side.
So with a four-sided building, two fronts, where do delivery trucks go? Yeah, so as I know, in a restaurant, you do get your deliveries. You know, dentist office is gonna get UPS for their supplies. You know, a restaurant, a semi's coming in a couple times a week, and your liquor trucks and your beer trucks,
It's
you know,
good.
you're getting
No doubt, but I
deliveries a
think,
day, multiple deliveries a day, and I don't think any of these guys are gonna be big enough to say, be there at 7 in the morning. You know, your purveyor is more powerful than you are in these smaller shops.
no
It's-
doubt, no doubt.
you know,
But I
so
think,
they come when they come.
I think, again, because we have balanced parking on both sides, there's the ability for that delivery truck to, you know, use some parking spaces if he has to for his delivery time. And again, we're making the assumption that we're going to have 2 to 4 restaurants, but we don't know. We don't know yet.
Yeah, if you go more medical, it's not an issue.
Right.
If you have
Exactly.
4 restaurants in here,
And
you're talking
and
dozens
honestly,
of
we are-
trucks a day.
We are getting some pushback from some of the restaurant-type users saying, we don't see enough traffic count there on Hamilton Road. So we're having to make them understand the traffic is coming. Tech Center will begin to be a larger artery, which will make Hamilton Road a heavier trafficked road. One of the things that's hurting us right now is the ramps are closed at the overpass, or at least one is and one isn't. So they're not seeing that constant flow. But we all agree we need some more food service there to serve the area.
Right.
So again, I really was pleased with Carter's thought process here. And again, I like the look of it. I'm not crazy about shoving it to Hamilton Road. Sure, it's better visibility, but I think we're close enough that the signage that we're asking for, which is just on the facade, we're not asking for any ground mounts, we're not asking for anything else. We think it'll work. But you would understand the food business obviously much better than any of us here, but I think we can manage that. We should be able to manage that.
Well, the other thing the food guys or a retailer is going to tell you is how much traffic on Hamilton Road is local and how much is passing through for a
Right.
going to the airport.
Right.
Who's not stopping anywhere.
But again, I mean, we've watched the traffic since Ortho 1 opened in October. The amount of traffic on Crescent and Tech Center when they're operational Monday through Friday is intense. I mean, we're thrilled to see those numbers, right? I mean, that's what we need for retail.
Right.
We need those numbers. So hopefully we'll continue to see that with the apartments, with another medical building that we're going to present here shortly. And then we have the hopes of doing another large medical building there as well in the coming months. We'll be presenting that to you all as well. So.
Good. Thank you. That's it for me, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions. First off, because he's not here, I'm going to fill in for Mr. Greenberg. Dumpsters. So those are going to be landscaped, correct?
Yes, they are. Yep. Masonry to match the finish on the building, and also landscaped around to code. Yep.
Okay. Next question. This might be more of a comment, but just want to get your thoughts. This kind of deals with internal circulation on that north, we'll call it the northeast access point there. As it relates to the drive-through, are you anticipating people who enter that ingress point, you're expecting them to loop, let's say if they want to go to that restaurant there on the north side, you're expecting them to loop all the way around and then pull into the drive-through, is that correct? Because trying to make that turn there, it just looks a little tight. I guess that's just an observation. Any thought about that?
It dimensionally is able to be made, and that's a particularly long stack as well. So the chances that drive-through stacking is all the way back to that intersection point is slim to none. So smaller vehicles certainly can make that left and then right in. But of course, as you mentioned, if not, you're welcome to circulate the site and come back around.
Okay. Again, just on paper without doing any hard traffic engineering, it just looks a little tight there. So that was the only thing that kind of caught my eye. Next question, also on that north side there, am I correct to assume that those two stub streets, those are going to be for future phases of whatever develops there to the north?
Correct. And you'll get a better view of that when we present the medical building. But yes, the stub street that will move to the north will take you to basically the balance of acreage, which is about 4.5 acres. Mm-hmm. And we have that planned for potentially one small 1 acre outlot and then a 3.5 acre medical building site. So that's the balance of that stub.
And as you can see in the landscape plan here, we actually originally had those planned for construction as part of this, mm-hmm. and then later decided, well, let's wait until we know what the precise layout is of the adjacent property to the north before we build them. So right now they're shown as potential access points, but the intent is to certainly tie in, yes.
Okay. Then, I'm sorry.
So I was going to ask Maddie. Maddie, do you have an overall site plan in your packet that you could put up so we could show that circulation? Okay. Maybe that one. Yeah, doesn't quite show. Yeah, I guess we didn't. Yeah, so if you look at basically where the top red line is, that's the outline red line, you can see between that north retail center and then the back of our medical building that we'll be presenting, there's a stub street there. And what I wanted you to recognize is that stub street as it goes north to serve that 4.5 acres, keep in mind that that 4.5 acres also has access from the roundabout at the end of Crescent Place, where you enter Ortho 1's site. So there is multiple connectivity. I don't want you to think it's all going to come from the loop road.
No, again, I just saw those stub streets there on the site plan. Just wanted to confirm that was kind of the intent to, at some point, connect into that northern parcel there. So the last question I have, and again, just some clarification, but this site is going to be connected with sidewalks, correct, to the residential to the east. So people who, theoretically live in those apartments can, walk down and, grab a bite to eat, theoretically.
Right. Understand, Mr. Mako, that right now what will happen, Tech Center Drive already has a leisure trail, a blacktop leisure trail on the north side that we are connecting into at these new curb cuts. Ultimately, I believe sometime later this summer, the traffic signal will be installed at Crescent Place. That traffic signal then will also provide, potentially in that design, is a crosswalk to serve and get people across to Pizzurro Park. So not only can you go east and west up Tech Center, but the goal is to get over to that side, because if you recall, for those of you that were on the commission, when we did the initial rezoning, we donated 37 acres across the street that will become part of Pizzurro, that will be hopefully turned into additional park space. So we want that park space to occur. We want those crosswalks to occur to serve our apartment residents, our daytime traffic, folks wanting to take a break during the day, walk to lunch, and so on. So I think we've done a really good job of the connectivity in working with city staff and our engineers.
In fact, since the start of my involvement, the eastern edge of this retail site, which months ago had a sidewalk plan, has actually been widened to become, an activity trail that goes up the east, the loop road to Tech Center, and then goes across across to the residential. So yes, there's quite a connection there.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Ms. Pollier.
No questions for me. Thank you.
All right, I just had one question. Is there access to this site from Hamilton Road? Direct access?
Direct access automotively, no, sir.
Okay.
Pedestrian-wise, there is not as well, because there is no sidewalk or trail on Hamilton Road. So basically, everything will terminate at, I would say the only connection to Pizzurro Park is going to come from this trafficked intersection and crosswalk.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant?
Now, I will say, Mr. Chairman, I did approach ODOT when I first started on this project years ago to try to get a curb cut on Hamilton Road, but that LAR, limited access right-of-way, you are not allowed to, within so many feet of a on-ramp, is the reason why we never were able to get or request a curb cut from you or ODOT. Unfortunately, because if I would have had that, I'd have sold this whole thing in one big fail swoop, and I wouldn't be standing here tonight. So.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the development plan?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to deny the development plan. No, I'm kidding, to approve the development plan. DP-0003-2025 for the, I'm sorry, wrong one. DP-0004-2025 for the Crescent Retail Shop.
There's been a motion in the affirmative by Mr. Tamarkin. Is there a second?
Second, Soriano.
Second by Mr. Soriano. Any discussion on the motion?
I got a question.
Mr. Tamarkin.
I'll address Mr. Canini's last question. If you would have sold it in one swoop, Gahanna would be much worse than it is today, the way you developed it.
Listen,
So-
let me remind you, Mr. Tamarkin, that before I was involved in this, I was told that a Bass Pro Shop was supposed to go here. So
I
quite a
can-
difference than what we have
confirm that. This is much better for all involved.
Roll call, please.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the variance application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion for V-0016-2025.
Motion by Mr. Tamarkin. Is there a second?
Second, Pollyea?
Second by Ms. Polya. Any discussion on this application? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Motion carries. We'll now move to the next project in this area, the Crescent Medical Office Building, and I'll ask the clerk to please read the applications into the record.
We have DP-0005-2025 to consider a development plan application for property located at Tech Center Drive, parcel ID 025-014183, current zoning GC, general commercial, Crescent MOB, Larry Canini applicant, and application V-0017-2025 to consider a variance application to vary sections 1107.01G citywide design standards, 1109.01A1 parking, access, and circulation, and 1109.02E setbacks and structure placement of the codified ordinances of the City of Gahanna for property located on Tech Center Drive, parcel ID 025-014183, current zoning GC, general commercial, Crescent MOB, Larry Canini, applicant.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to the administration for their presentation.
This next project is located just northeast of the previous project. The project includes major development plan and variance applications for a new medical office building. It is around 11,900 square feet, is a one-story building and located on a 1.4 acre site. The primary materials for the building are the exact same as the retail building, the same burgundy and gray brick with metal accents. And code requires a total of 35 parking spaces for the medical use and 49 are provided. Here's a site plan that shows the medical office building. You can see that this site also has double frontage in a slightly different way. And due to the double frontage and the unique shape of the site, it was difficult to orient things on the site and meet all code requirements, so there are a few variances with this application as well. One of the variances is for the dumpster location, which is highlighted on the site plan. The dumpster is located to the front of the building, which is why it requires a variance. Here's the submitted landscape plan. For this project, since it's a bit smaller, less landscaping was required at about 1,200 square feet. The applicant is providing 3,300 square feet of parking lot landscaping. Once again, all of the tree planting requirements are met with 12 parking lot trees and an additional 46 caliper inches for Chapter 914. The parking area is screened by hedges similar to those used for the retail building along both Crescent Circle and Crescent Place. And to meet code requirements, there are sidewalks that connect to both frontages instead of just one. Here are elevations of the building, so you can see that the materials are the same as the retail building, same brick colors, and even the entrances to the building are very similar. The two top elevations, the south and the east, those are what would be considered the front elevations for the building, and the bottom two are the rear. Here is the same rendering from before that shows the overall area. So you can see where this building is located in relation to the retail building. And then the rendering on the bottom would be the primary view off of Crescent Circle. There are also 3 variances requested with this application. They are the same variances from the previous application. So the first one is that the ground floor primary facade must be at least 25% transparent glass. In this case, there are 2 primary facades, one of which is 18.1%, the other is 19.4%. And then parking areas must be located to the rear of the primary building. In this case, the parking area is located entirely to the front of the building. And then finally, dumpsters must be located to the rear of the primary building, and this dumpster is located in the front parking lot. Here is the same variance criteria. And staff recommends approval of all three variances as submitted. Same as before, the applicant states that it's difficult to meet the 25% glass requirement. And the site does have two frontages as well that make it difficult to locate parking to the rear of the building. And the parking lot does fully meet screening requirements from both right-of-ways. And the dumpster screening requirements are exceeded in the same way that they were for the retail application. There is a dumpster enclosure and landscaping surrounding the enclosure. Here is the major development plan criteria. And staff also recommends approval of the major development plan. The application meets the development plan criteria, and this use is very consistent with code and the surrounding area. As mentioned, there are a lot of medical office buildings in the area and more to come. The building design matches the proposed retail development exactly, and it's also compatible with the brick color or the brick material used for the Sheets building, and all landscaping and setback requirements are met. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kapka. We'll now open the public comment portion of the hearing and invite the applicant to make any comments.
Good evening again. Larry Canini Associates, 3841 Man Road, Blacklick. Yes, this is another exciting project for us. We have commitments from 3 practices at this point, so 85% of the building's committed. And interesting enough that 2 of those practices, and I won't give specific names, but I'll give the types of disciplines that they are. One is an oculoplastic surgeon who is currently leasing on Buckles Court North and is looking to expand her practice. So this is a perfect opportunity for her to stay in the area but be able to expand. So she's very excited about that, as are we. The other practice is a general practice, which will be concierge type general practice. That was part of a larger group on Buckles Court North and decided to go off on her own, and so she is committed to us as well. And the third practice is one expanding from a downtown practice. So in all 3 instances, we, like we have done at Buckles Court on some of our buildings up there, have given these folks opportunity to own the building and be a partner with me in the building. So as I've mentioned this before in other presentations, having that commitment from them basically is a positive for all of us because it makes them part of the community, committed to the building, not on some short-term lease that then they go somewhere else in 5 years. So I think it's a positive for everybody, and it's an opportunity for these practices that they don't normally get. So we have come to like this model and enjoy working with these folks. So we have about 2,000 square feet remaining in this building, and again, working with someone now who is interested, so we will most likely, by the time we break ground, be 100% occupied. So with this success, and as I mentioned in the earlier presentation, a medical user going to the retail center because they wanted more of retail visibility, we are in the midst of designing a 40,000 square foot building to be presented to you folks in a couple months for the balance of the land. So things have gone well here. We're very excited about the success and can answer any questions for you. Something Carter mentioned that we did fail to mention in our presentation earlier, that the brick that we are using on the retail center and the medical building align with the brick that was used on Ortho 1. So again, trying to create that connectivity of style and colors without duplicating exact architecture. Questions, comments?
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment on this application? Mr. Perlman, no? All right. We will now close the public comment portion of the meeting and open it up to questions from the commission. We'll start again with Mr. Suriano.
No questions initially, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tamarkin,
No questions.
Mr. Mako,
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Pollyea.
Just one question. As far as, you said you have some tenants who are committed. What is the nature of that commitment? Is there like a financial commitment?
Oh,
Is
absolutely,
there-
because
Okay.
because we made them partners in the project.
Okay.
They have made an equity commitment and will be an owner with me in an LLC that will own the building. I will
Like a
be,
joint venture?
you can call it that. You can call it, not really a joint venture because there's more than just one party, there's multiple parties. So everybody gets a percentage of ownership based on their square footage of space that they're taking.
All the tenants?
Yes, all the tenants. So I keep a small interest. I am obviously the developer, but then I also take on the role of property manager once it's done. So we handle all the property management for them. So they basically run their practice and don't need to really worry about anything, but they get an ownership interest in it. So they get the benefits of ownership, cost segregation, obviously increase in value and equity down the road, so.
So do they still have, are there still triple net leases involved? Or do you
We
take care of
we will,
that?
we will basically create leases, so their practice will pay rent to the LLC, but everybody owns a part of the LLC, so they're paying themselves rent in essence.
That's very interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
thank
we-
you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, that's generally, I don't want to say I'm one of the only folks around that do that, but I'm probably one of the only developers that will do something on this smaller scale for smaller practices, where most of the developers are trying to do like an Ortho One, a 40, 50, 60,000 square foot building. So it's, if you're familiar with Beecher Road and Hamilton Road, that's kind of the model that we started with years and years ago. And it kind of just grew from that. I think that model was one where we condominiumized it and you got your 2,000 square feet and you owned a condo suite. That model's tough these days because of the specifics of practices and their needs. So this model works a little bit better and gets away from all of the condominium laws and all the things that come with that and regulations and such. So, yeah, so
Thank you for that information.
no problem.
I don't have any further questions.
No questions from me. Is there a motion to approve the development plan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve DP-0005-2025 for the Crescent Medical Office Building.
Motion by Mr. Tamarkin. Is there a second?
Second, Suriano.
Second by Mr. Soriano. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Tamarkin.
I'd like to address Mr. Canini's comment again about the doctors. I'm pretty good friends with a podiatrist who's in one of your buildings in the Crescent here. Couldn't be happier with
Right.
his practice and the financial arrangement with being able to partner with you on the building.
Yeah,
He's thrilled.
and that particular podiatrist, who you and I both know, was in one of my Beecher buildings previously. So again, to have an opportunity to go from one to another as your practice grows, or as what we're seeing in the industry as well, private equity is coming to town and bundling up these practices and merging practices. So what generally happens in that instance is you have younger docs, newer docs. Nobody wants the other person's old location. So the idea is, let's build new. So where do they go for that? So one of the things that serves us all well, the community and myself, is having those incentives. And in this case, this project having the 80% 10-year tax abatement. And our new economic development director is sitting right here. He will tell you that that's key to us attracting these types of users. Having that carrot or having that tool in our toolbox is important, because how do we differentiate ourselves from New Albany or Westerville or whatever? Obviously, geographically, practices have their areas, but we have to have something else to entice them. And this is the means to do that. So we appreciate the city's efforts, council's efforts, and obviously your efforts, Commission, on making all this come together.
Jeff would like to take credit for that, I know, but before your time, I think. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Soriano,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the variance application?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion for the approval of V-0017-2025 for the Crescent Medical Office Building.
Motion by Mr. Tamarkin. Is there a second?
Second, Suriano.
Second by Mr. Soriano. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Tomarkin,
Yes.
Soriano,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's talk about some signs. I'll ask the clerk to please read the first application into the record.
We have MSP-0001-2025 to consider a master sign plan application for property located at Tech Center Drive, parcel ID 025-014183, current zoning GC, general commercial, the Crescent Retail, Carter Bean, applicant.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to the administration for their presentation.
The first master sign plan application is associated with the Crescent retail applications that we just saw. As a reminder, the site contains 2 multi-tenant retail buildings with a total of 8 tenants. The master sign plan allows for larger signage than what is in the standard zoning code requirements. For this site, the MSP includes 18 wall signs and the possibility for up to 2 monument signs. Every tenant is allowed up to 2 signs, except for 2 end tenants that can have up to 3 signs each. And this is due to the frontage on Crescent Circle and Hamilton Road and the tenants needing visibility from both of those frontages. The possible monument signs would be 1 along Hamilton Road and 1 along Crescent Circle, and both would be on 2 feet tall masonry bases that would match the building materials. Here are some renderings, once again showing the view of the building from Crescent Circle and Hamilton Road. And here are some highlights and more details from the master sign plan, just some regulations that I thought were worth pointing out. If a tenant occupies multiple spaces, they can only have the amount of signage that's allowed for 1 tenant space. In addition to the standard signs that are prohibited in the zoning code, awning, canopy, and electronic signs are also prohibited on the site. All tenants must utilize the same sign panel or cabinet design, and the background will all match the Sherwin-Williams Gauntlet Gray paint color. And these requirements for color and design are the same as the medical office building. All of the wall signs will be either internally and/or halo illuminated, and there are 2 tenants on this site that will have the option to install projecting signs in lieu of a wall sign if desired. Here are some tables that compare the code requirements versus the MSP requirements for multi-tenant signage. In the zoning code, there are specific requirements for wall signs located on buildings that have more than 1 tenant that vary from the standard wall sign requirements. So those are 50% of storefront width for length and a height of 30 inches. There are no area requirements for these wall signs. They just must meet the length and height requirements, compared to the MSP, where tenants are limited to 11 feet through 13 feet 4 inches based on which tenant space they're in, and a height of 44 inches. All of the wall signs on the site are 41 square feet, except for 2 that are 49 square feet. The total area of all wall signs on the site is 754 square feet, versus in the standard zoning code, the site would be limited to a total of 400 square feet for all signage on the lot. There are a total of 18 signs. As mentioned, most tenants are allowed 2, and 2 tenants are allowed 3 signs. Now, there is an option to also have 2 monument signs on the site. These monument signs are actually limited to a smaller area than what's in the standard zoning code. So they would have a length of 8 feet and be 8 feet tall measured from grade, and an area of 50 square feet, which is 30 square feet than the zoning code. On this slide, you can see building A and building B, and the red lines indicate where each sign would be. So you can see that the 2 end tenants, tenants A and H, would have that 3rd sign on the outside. Here are elevations for building A. All of the signs on these elevations are 41 square feet, except for the one in the bottom left on the west elevation, which is 49 square feet. Here is building B. It's the same thing here. All of them are 41 square feet, except for the one on the bottom right on the west elevation. Here is the master sign plan criteria that must be met. The proposed signs meet the applicable development standards of the zoning ordinance unless variances are requested. The proposed signs are sited and scaled appropriately to create cohesive character for the multi-tenant building. The proposed signs are not in conflict with public streets, open spaces, utilities, or rights-of-way, and the proposed signs would not have undesirable effects on the area. Staff recommends approval of the master sign plan as submitted. Staff believes that the master sign plan meets all the criteria and all applicable code requirements, and it encourages consistent signage not only on this site, but also with the medical office building site. And staff believes that the wall signage is in scale with the building size, and there's also a little bit of creativity allowed through the possibility of projecting signs. And finally, the maximum monument sign area is less than the standard code requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kapka. We'll now open the public comment portion of the meeting and invite the applicant back for any comments to the lectern.
Carter Bean, 4400 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio, 43214. I hope that by seeing the graphics in perspective and elevation, you realize that this isn't an exercise in trying to maximize signage, right? It's an exercise in addressing the two frontages and also getting consistency throughout the development, where if you have a smaller tenant with smaller frontage next to a larger tenant, larger frontage, you don't have, various size signs based upon those tenant frontages, right? We wanted consistency for each. What you see in these renderings is obviously a worst case scenario where every single bay is filled with a tenant. That won't happen. There will be tenants that take multiple bays. So the number of signs seen here in reality will never occur. And by establishing that standard sign cabinet, it also helps us from a maintenance standpoint. We have nice brick on the exterior of these buildings, and if we have tenants coming and going, and with each individual letter that they put up there, they're punching holes in the brick, it's kind of a nightmare over time and causes an ugly appearance. So these cabinets also serve as wireways for all those individual letters and logos that'll go on there. So again, the purpose here was for consistency and getting a nice clean look throughout, not an exercise in trying to overrun your code from an area standpoint.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting and open it up to questions from the commission, starting with Mr. Soriano.
Yeah, question for Mr. Bean. In the instance, understanding this is a worst-case scenario, in the instance where you have a tenant that takes up multiple bays, would the cabinet or the zone where the sign is, would it just be left blank?
It would, well, the cabinet wouldn't be installed.
Okay.
So you'd see the brick that's behind it. Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Tamarkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned no electric signs. I assume you're referring to like we have a McDonald's where the words change and flashing.
Yep.
But a tenant can have a lit sign.
Correct. So internally illuminated, internally face lit or halo lit, or a combination of both would be applied to the face of that cabinet. So dimensional lettering and logos would be applied, beyond the face of that cabinet. Cabinet's 2.5 inches deep, and typically those letters and logos are 4 inches, then proud of that.
And if a tenant wanted a sign that wasn't fitting in the cabinet, their letters take a McDonald's arch.
They just have to scale it within that cabinet.
Got to fit in the
Yep.
cabinet, and it's got to be the dimension of the cabinet, and you can put anything on the plastic facade.
Yep.
But it's got to be in the cabinet.
4 inches less than each edge, yes.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have no questions.
You'll never get a McDonald's in there then.
Ms. Pollier.
Just one question, just as a follow-up. Let's say there was a restaurant, for example, that was like some kind of a national restaurant that had signage that is used nationally. how would you handle that as far as the cabinet goes?
So they can do that within the framework of that cabinet. You know, they can put their logo and lettering and whatnot. It would just have to be scaled to fit within that rectangle.
What if that's not possible? Are you able to make accommodations for that or no?
What we would probably do is be back visiting with you, making a
That's what I was gonna ask.
presentation
That's
on
what I was
what
gonna
they're,
ask. Okay.
that would be on them. That would
Okay.
be on them and us to come back to
I
you.
gotcha. That was
Now-
that was my next question. Okay.
As mentioned, we have the ability to do some monument signs on Hamilton Road and Crescent Place, obviously Hamilton Road being the higher traffic impact. In a situation like that, we would most likely reserve that monument sign for somebody like that, that's taking a larger space and somebody that's maybe in need of that visibility.
Okay.
But again, that's something that I will reserve as the developer and make that determination when the time comes.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
So forgive the non-architect in me, but what is a projecting sign?
So oftentimes you see these blade signs that add a lot of visual interest. And the end cap tenants where we expect to have restaurant users that might want to have a more exciting sign like that, we've written in some parameters where they can trade square footage of wall sign to install a projecting sign, vertically oriented likely, you know, so that it just adds some more three-dimensional texture and visual interest.
All right, thank you for that. You don't want to know what I was thinking. Yeah. Any further questions?
Could I ask a follow-up?
Mr. Tamarkin.
Mr. Canina, I assume if you do get the tenant that wants a drive-through, you would also come back because drive-throughs need more signage than an inline tenant.
Yeah, I mean, your directional signage, potentially your order boards, some of that, yeah. I mean, we're in the midst of that right now on one in New Albany, so we're back. In essence, we got conditional uses there. Your code doesn't necessarily address that, so we will visit those based on who that user is, right? Because we've had some restaurant users tell us that we don't need a menu board because everything's done digitally and orders are done online and by phone, so it's simply a pickup window without any kind of order board. But then you still have the traditional order board type restaurants as well. You see that more on the fast food side than you do on the,
Which I think we approved the sheets.
yeah, right.
Quick note on menu board signage, they no longer require a sign permit. So if they, a variance wouldn't be needed for a menu board sign.
As long as they're on premise, obviously, right? We can't have a menu board off premise in the middle of the right of way.
Any further questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve this sign permit?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve MSP-0001-2025 for the Crescent Retail Master Sign Plan.
There's a motion by Mr. Tamarkin. Is there a second?
Second, Suriano.
Second by Mr. Soriano. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Pollyea.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Our last application, if you would please, Ms. McGuire.
We have MSP-0002-2025 to consider a master sign plan application for property located at Tech Center Drive, parcel ID 025-014183, current zoning GC General Commercial, Crescent MOB, Larry Canini, applicant.
And we'll now turn it over to the administration for their presentation.
This next master sign plan is associated with the medical office building. This site contains one multi-tenant medical office building, and once again, the master sign plan allows for larger signage than the standard code requirements. This master sign plan is a bit smaller. It only includes 6 wall signs and no monument signs. Most tenants are permitted 1 wall sign except for the end tenants, which would be permitted 2 wall signs. Here is a rendering of the site. Outlined in red are the location of all of the tenant signs. Then here are some highlights from the MSP. Once again, awning and canopy and electronic signs are all prohibited, and the sign cabinets utilize the same colors as the retail building, and they will all be internally and/or halo illuminated. So it's very similar signage to what would be at the Crescent Retail Building. Here's another table that compares standard code requirements to what's in the master sign plan. I won't go through the standard code requirements again, but this master sign plan has a length of 8 feet for the wall signs and a height of 4 feet, which comes out to 32 square feet for each tenant sign. And the total amount of signage is 192 square feet. With the standard zoning code, this site would be allowed to have up to 307 square feet of total signage. And there are 6 total signs. As mentioned, 1 sign per tenant, except for the 2 end tenants who are permitted an additional sign. Here is the site plan in red. The little red lines show, once again, where the signs would be located. And here are some more building elevations. Because of the L-shaped of the building, 2 of the signs are shown on here twice, but this is just to give some more context. And then here is the same master sign plan criteria that must be met. Finally, staff recommends approval of the master sign plan as it meets all criteria and applicable code requirements. This master sign plan also encourages consistent signage on the site and the adjacent sites. And once again, the wall signage is in scale with the building sign, and the signs included with this master sign plan are a bit smaller than the retail building. Thank you.
We'll now open the public comment portion of the hearing and ask if the applicant has anything further they would like to add.
Larry Canini and Associates. Nothing more than, again, the consistency with the retail center, and we, at this point, decided against the monument sign because this building has a relatively close distance to that intersection of Crescent Loop, or Crescent Place, and Crescent Loop Road. We feel that these ought to be sufficient for wayfinding and such for patients and so on. So normally I'm fighting with doctors who want their name everywhere and on every mounted sign possible, but I think I won the battle on this one. So other than that, again, just looking to try to keep some consistency to what we're doing here with signage.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment? Seeing none, we'll now close the public comment portion and open it up to questions from the commission, starting with Mr. Soriano.
No additional questions.
Mr. Tamarkin.
No question.
Mr. Mako.
No additional questions.
Ms. Pollier.
No questions.
And none from me. Is there a motion to approve the master sign plan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve MSP-0002-2025, sign plan for the Crescent Medical Office Building.
Motion by Mr. Tamarkin. Is there a second?
Second, Soriano.
Second by Mr. Soriano. Any discussion on the motion?
None for me.
Seeing none, roll call, please.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Soriano,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Pollier.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you,
very much.
Commission, for all the opportunities tonight and your approval. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Canini.
That concludes our applications for this evening, and we'll move through the business of our agenda. Is there any unfinished business to discuss?
No, sir.
Any new business? We'll now move to our official reports, starting with our Assistant City Attorney, Mr. Roth.
Nothing to report at this time, Mr. Chair.
Director of Planning.
Thank
Floor
you,
is
Mr.
yours.
Chair. Just a couple of items very briefly. Looking at our next Planning Commission meeting, looks June 25th. Looks like we'll have an item or two on that agenda. And in about a little less than 2 weeks, I'll be giving a department update to the City Council, covering a little bit of the day-to-day of the department, going over some development numbers thus far for this year. When that's completed, I'll be giving the same presentation to Planning Commission, let you know what we've been up to so far this year. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Blackford. Ms. Pollier, anything from the council?
Just a few items. Let me get my phone out. Just a few things. One, I'm not sure if anybody watched City Council's meeting, the Committee of the Whole meeting on Monday night. the gentlemen that were in here earlier this evening, on behalf of Gahanna Logistics Center, were also there, starting the process to ask for a tax abatement for that site. So we'll see how that plays out. That I believe that they asked for, that was asked for on an emergency level, and so we'll just see how that plays out and what happens with that. So if you're interested, stay tuned to city council meetings on Monday night on Gahanna's YouTube channel. You can watch live or you can watch on demand after the fact. And then just one more thing, I think all of us got the link a couple days ago from, I think it was Clerk Van Meter, I believe, who sent a link for the virtual tour of the new City Hall building at 825 Tech Center Drive. Everybody should look at it if you haven't already. It's coming along really nicely and it looks really good. So it's also posted on social media. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Ms. Pollier. I have nothing from the chair to report, so are there any correspondences or actions that we need to consider?
No, sir.
Any comments from the commission members? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you.